亲爱的观众，大家好，我是黄思诺，欢迎收看今天的 American Odyssey 美国探索节目。现在呢，我在华盛顿华语电影节的现场。这个电影节呢，今年才是它的第2年，可是呢，组织者呢已经收到了50多集来自世界各地的华语电影。好，今天呢，我就带您去看一些这些电影的精彩片段，同时呢，也去采访一些世界著名的电影导演、制片人，还有一些电影工作者。好，请跟我来。
为纪念中国电影110周年华诞，华盛顿华语电影节今年举办光影100年、中国电影110周年回顾展以及中美电影及文化交流论坛活动。活动期间，包括由阮玲玉主演、1934年出品的黑白默片《神女》，国民女神张曼玉于1991年演绎的纪念性剧作《阮玲玉》，中国电影史上最富影响力的《小城之春》，国际上屡获大奖的李安导演执导的《饮食男女》，姜文导演处女作反映70年代中国青年生活的《阳光灿烂的日子》，耗18年制作，2015年中国10亿人民币票房黑马《西游记之大圣归来》等在内的18部新老华语电影将登上华盛顿地区大荧幕与观众见面。此番也是《西游记之大圣归来》首次登陆华府地区大荧幕。下面我们将采访几位参加电影节的嘉宾。
欢迎您到华盛顿。
好，谢谢。
您是第一次参加这个华盛顿华语电影节吗？
对，第一次。
那您今天是专门从北京飞到华盛顿的是吗？
是专门从北京过来的。
今年呢，我非常盼望跟您来交流，因为今年的主题呢是讲100年中国历史电影的历史。
对，我觉得它的整个的主题的设置以及影片的放映都体现了这一点吧，就是中国电影110年的一个纪念的活动，相当于是。
这个我看到您发表了很多的学术文章哈，是讲中国的历史，而且是从中国的这个老上海的电影历史一直讲到现代。您能不能综合的概括一下中国的这个历史啊，这个电影历史？
对，我觉得中国电影的历史实际上是与中国社会以及20世纪中国文化的变迁紧密的联系在一起的。那么在中国电影有史以来最优秀的作品当中，我们可以直接看到20世纪中国人的审美风尚对及文化状况，对，也能够看到整个国家形象的历史性的演变。
我觉得对为一个就是我从中国出来到美国又居住30年的华人来讲，这个对我震撼最大的就是这个中国呢，我们的电影历史是从好莱坞的影响开始的，但是呢，在经历了这么多年之后，现在呢，我能够看到不仅是中国的这好莱坞的电影影响中国，反而现在是中国的电影来影响好莱坞甚至世界的影评。
对啊，我觉得您的这个归纳挺有说服力的。实际上的话，尽管中国早期电影刚开始受到美国电影的影响以及其他国家电影的影响，但是在我看来，30年代开始，到40年代，中国电影已经开始走出了自己的民族的风格，并且有了自己跟自己的国家和民族的观众对话的这样的一种强大的力量。那么，当然后来一些年里，中国电影由于各种原因对没有真正的跟好莱坞分庭抗礼，对，但是我觉得随着现在整个中国经济的崛起，随着整个中国的国际影响力的加强，那么中国电影自身的市场也在逐渐的培育起来，中国的影响力也随着中国电影的影响力也随着中国的影响力，可以说逐渐为好莱坞所关注。
李教授，您能不能给我们1分钟的历史课，把这个中国的历史很快的用1分钟缩影给我们讲一下这个最经典的作品？
对啊，我觉得中国电影100年可以说也是名作纷呈， 比如说《劳工之爱情》作为目前中国电影资料馆流程最早的一部影片，1922年出品的，就是非常著名的一部喜剧短片。然后到了30年代，中国电影有了非常好的跟整个社会相连接的一种能力，比如说神女啊、马路天使啊，这一次展映里头都会要有的。那么到了40年代，中国民族电影可以说进入到了一个高峰，创造了无愧于时代也无负于世界的中国电影的经典，比如说小城之春、一江春雨向东流。那么到了50年代开始，一直到现在，我觉得中国电影的美丽和魅力，中国电影的辉煌，主要是由两岸3地的中国电影，中国内地、台湾和香港来共同组成的。那么中国的第3代、第4代、第5代和第6代中国电影人，以及台湾的国语电影，还有香港新浪潮以来的一系列的电影，可以说不仅仅表现了这个国家和民族的悠久的历史和文化，以及中国人的情感和生活，同时也让中国电影真正的走向了世界。
哇，李教授，咱们要讲电影啊，不能不讲好莱坞，你说是不是？
对，是的。
讲起好莱坞，你能不能讲一讲好莱坞对中国电影的影响是怎样呢？
好莱坞应该说对中国的电影的影响还是挺深入的。比如说，在中国电影刚开始诞生之初，我刚才说到《劳工之爱情》这一部短片，其实就受到了好莱坞的喜剧片的影响甚至卓别林在早期对中国电影的影响也是非常的深厚的。那么1949年以来，应该说中国内地跟好莱坞的关系可以说曾经是非常的紧张，我们很少引用好莱坞，但是台湾和香港的好莱坞的浪潮还是一波接着一波的在延续。改革开放以来，两岸3地中国电影同时受到了好莱坞的非常强大的冲击，甚至到了20世纪90年代之初，在我看来，两岸3地的中国电影都进入了一个低潮。那么这个时候最主要的两岸3地的中国电影市场几乎都被好莱坞所占据。但是到了现在，我觉得好莱坞电影其实影响力也还是非常巨大，在两岸3地。对，但是呢，就是中国内地为主的华语电影，可以说也开始逐渐拥有了自己的广大的受众群体，也正在努力的分享，或者说努力的去占有好莱坞曾经拥有的那个大的市场。
这个李教授最近我看了部片子哈，就是 Tom Cruise 演的《Mission Impossible》，我非常震撼。震撼的呢，不是因为他这电影拍得非常好，最主要呢是在他的 credit 里面讲呢，这部电影是由中国，尤其是阿里巴巴影视集团呢他们投资，所以对我是真的是相当震撼。对我来说呢，这说明中国呢不仅仅开始影响到世界的这个好莱坞的电影，更主要呢，我们现在介入它的投资和这个制作。您对这件事怎么看呢？
我觉得这也是随着中国经济的崛起而出现的一个比较独特的状况吧。应该说，早在10年之前，我们都很难想象中国的资本能够进入到好莱坞这样的一种跨国电影的运作之中特别是好莱坞的主流商业电影，中国电影人包括中国的观众，可以说很难想到会有这么一天但是应该说，在前几年开始，中国电影就已经开始有了这样的一个局面，这种以好莱坞的主流商业制作为代表的，由中国人投资参与出品的，甚至主导着出品的这样的一种跨国电影，也开始出现在全世界的电影市场上面。我觉得这也是让中国电影非常有信心的一件事情。当然，在这个过程当中，问题其实还是蛮多的。就是说，如果我们只是作为出品方，然后获得相应的票房的分成，当然可能能达到一定的目的。但是电影它毕竟是一种文化的产业，对，是一种表现国家民族精神气质的一种文化产品。对，所以说，如果我们始终只是在好莱坞的主流大片当中进行 商业性的投资，而没有更多的在文化生产上面予以更多的关注的话，我觉得最终，即便是中国人投资的好莱坞电影，它的属性也还是好莱坞电影，还是美国电影，也不是中国电影。
所以作为一个学者啊，那是不是这是有一个新篇章啊？我记得您从前写的论文一直写到2008、2004。
哦，谢谢您，
是不是
谢谢您，对，一直都挺关注。对
那现在是不是这一段又是这个中国历史的一个新阶段呢？而且确实您说的非常对，有新的问题，包括经济模式、市场影响，还有包括文化的问题。您会写这方面的这个专业的学术论文吗？
对啊，实际上的话，我刚刚从俄罗斯的圣彼得堡回来，就圣彼得堡大学开了一个会，就东方是东方，西方是西方这样的一个会议。那么我当时的一个发言就是《狼图腾与中国与跨国电影的作者论》。对吧？就《狼图腾》也是这样的电影，就是中国资本投入，然后邀请法国著名导演来拍摄一部中国电影，就是类似这样的一种情况，绝对是新世纪，特别是2010年以来中国电影的一个普遍性的状况，包括你刚才说的汤姆克鲁斯主演的《碟中谍5》，是吧？对，都是这样的一种状况。那么我个人也还是非常关注的，我也会在我的新的电影研究和电影史里头把这样的一些篇章写进去。
我觉得啊，这个中国的制片人和中国的投资者还真是应该研究哈，这个经济模式、回收影响文化，确实是
文化折扣。
对。那今天呢，您在这个华盛顿华语电影节，您希望能看到什么样的作品呢？
在我们的现在的和未来的华盛顿的华语电影节里头，其实我还是非常愿意看到，就全世界的华人能够以一种更加开放的、对更加包容的一种心态，呈现华人的生存状况，并且能够让这样的一些电影能够在全球范围内得到广泛的传播，这样的电影。
谢谢你。
好，也谢谢你们。
Michael, it's a pleasure to meet you today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, welcome to Washington, D.C. Chinese Film Festival.
You know, it's a little bit of the best of both worlds, and I love that whole concept.
Well, it's hard to not talk about your name without linking you with Batman.
Yeah, I think that gentleman and I have been joined at the hip for quite a while now, and I think we will be for a long time to come, I'm happy to say.
Well, you're absolutely right. So how did you get started?
Well, I grew up in America as a fan and a reader of comic books. Superheroes I loved in particular. And of all the superheroes that I read and collected, Batman was my favorite, starting when I was 8 years old. And I think the real reason was because Batman is a superhero with no superpowers. I always contend that his greatest superpower is his humanity. And because of that, I think young people in particular, but people all over the world, in a way that transcends borders and cultures, can identify with Batman. Not only because he's a hero, but also because his origin story, how he came to be Batman, was a very emotional, primal story that people from different cultures could relate to. And of course, he's got the greatest supervillains in history. And I am a great believer in the theory of Stan Lee at Marvel Comics, who has always said that the greatest and the longest lasting superheroes are the ones who have had the greatest villains. Because ultimately, it is those supervillains who define our heroes. And I think he's right about that. And of course, the last thing about Batman, he has a very cool car.
Well, I heard you collected 30,000 comic books. Is that true?
That was just through high school.
Where did you get all the money?
Well, back then, which was many, 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 many years ago, comic books in the United States were only 10 cents. And nobody back then knew that old comic books had tremendous value. So I used to go to a flea market near my house, and every week the man there would bring in boxes and boxes of old comic books. And because they were so old, he felt they had no value, so he sold them to me for a nickel apiece. And that's how I amassed my collection. More recently, I've donated 45,000 comic books to Indiana University's Lilly Library in Bloomington, Indiana, which is its rare book library.
Well, that's such a gift. Well, I heard stories that when you early on when you started, many studios rejected you, including Columbia. One of the reasons was Batman is not going to be popular because of Annie. So, what did you see that the major movie studios did not see?
I have to go back and set this in the context of the times. When I first acquired the rights to Batman, I was in my 20s. This was the 1970s. My partner Ben Melniker and I raised some money and bought the rights from DC Comics. I went out to Hollywood, but it was a Hollywood in the 1970s that were of a different era, the executives, the agents, even the talent pool. And they very much looked down their nose at comic books. They did not have great respect for comic books or for the artists and writers of comic books or the creators themselves. And they felt that at best, comic books were nothing more than cheap entertainment for little children, and that was it. Now, I saw things very, very differently. And I saw superheroes as our modern-day mythology. And I've always made the statement that the ancient gods of Greece and Rome and Egypt all still exist today, except they wear spandex and capes. Because if you look at all the great superheroes, they are really primarily influenced by Hercules and Mercury and Poseidon and so many of the classical mythological characters.
Well, no, Batman has become such a cultural icon for America. And not only we recognize it, and around the world, I think you remember at one time there's a little boy from East Germany.
Yes.
And was waving in the Batman shirt or something. So now Chinese, of course, are the biggest fans of your movies. So how do you explain this cultural phenomenon?
Well, I think that people all over love to read about and see stories about heroes. It reflects the best of humans.
But they're not real.
They are stories, but they are stories that are meant to inspire, just like the legends and the mythology of ancient history. If you go back to the ancient folklore tales, it doesn't matter what religion or what culture, every single religion and culture has their own stories, and many of them are very, very similar. And you could see that they were rooted really in the same place. And I think it binds us together, and it inspires us to be the best we can be. And it inspires us to try to do good in the world. And, one of the themes of superheroes is we all may have differences, but in the face of a greater threat, we all need to come together as one family of mankind. And that's a great theme that resonates all around the world through our superheroes.
I have to agree with you. Well, let's talk about money. Okay, in 1989, when you made the Batman, you received $300,000 plus 30% royalty. So what kind of money are you making nowadays per movie? Can you share with us?
What I can share with you is this, and you're going to have to look deep into my eyes to believe this. I do this because I absolutely love it. These comic books and these superheroes have been my passion since I was a little boy. And I am so happy having discovered this passion and made it into my life's work. And I was lucky enough to grow up just outside of New York City, which is where all the original comic book companies were. So as a child, a teenager, a college student, I had an opportunity to meet all the creators of these great comic book characters from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I got to know them personally. And now most of them are gone. And I feel that I have a responsibility to bring their works to the world and to validate their journey, because many of them did not make very much money while they were alive. And it was a struggle for them to keep food on the table and to keep a roof over their families' houses. There was times in the 1950s where comic books were very denigrated by society. And today now, the works of these people are in galleries and they're in museums, and it's a wonderful thing. But I feel I know them and I knew them, and it's important for me to bring these characters to life as best I can.
Well, talking about money, this weekend I just watched the Mission Impossible, and I was quite surprised. Of course, the movie was partially sponsored by Chinese Alibaba film group, and I heard you recently signed a major $30 million deal with a Chinese major entertainment company. Can you talk about your vision and what you plan to do? I heard it's a quite extensive collaboration.
We are thrilled to be working with Chinese companies and Chinese people. My son David and I are partnered in our venture, and we have spent the last 2 years spending a lot of time in China and in Beijing and in Shanghai and Guangzhou, and we have been all over.
Have you learned Chinese?
I have not yet learned Chinese, but I can tell you the following. I have my first grandchild now, courtesy of my son and his wife. She's 4 months old, and her name is Harley Jade. And my son and daughter-in-law said the first thing she is going to learn is Mandarin. So one day I expect to bring her with me, and she will be my interpreter.
Well, that'd be a great vision, considering Chinese is being spoken by 1/4 of the world population. Well, talking about money, this is the flip side of it. You mentioned your concern about the major movie studios control the creative process. You feel like you're making an infomercial for toys, for theme parks. So what's the impact of Chinese money on our major Hollywood productions?
Well, the first thing is we don't consider our Chinese partners as money, as a bank, as an ATM machine. Not at all. Our objective was to spend a couple of years in China, nurture relationships, build actual friendships, build trust among all of us, and now share as full partners at the table through the entire creative and business process. We want our Chinese friends, our Chinese partners to be part of the process. We need them involved because we want our films, yes, to play globally. That's very important. But they've got to be authentic to China. They have to be culturally sensitive to China. And there's no way through our lens, where we grew up, that we could successfully do that on our own unless we are working hand in hand with our Chinese partners. So it's a whole different way of approaching the making of movies, and we couldn't be more excited about it.
I fully agree. So just quickly, Michael, what's your outlook? What's coming from your production pipeline in the next 5 years?
The outlook is bright. It is wonderful. Our creative sessions already have been exciting, and everything we hoped that they would be, it's turning into that. We have just made the big announcement regarding Watcha. We have a big announcement coming up at New York Comic-Con on October 10th in New York City. And then we are going to be making some announcements at the American Film Market in November in Los Angeles. So we are building up to the point where we think it's going to be the future, and the future is now.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. I'm sure the Chinese audience is very much looking forward to see your new productions.
Thank you very, very much, and I will be back soon because I cannot go too long without duck.
Would you introduce briefly about your Culture Exchange Center?
Sure. I'm Pat Brookover. I'm the president of the Center for Cultural Exchange. It was set up to try to establish good and peaceful relationships between China, the rest of Asia, and the United States.
What have you accomplished in the past few years? I know you just came back from China.
Well, we've accomplished a lot of things. We're trying to educate children here about Chinese culture. We did travel the group of 27 students to Beijing, Hong Kong, and Xiamen. There they got to see cultural treasures and heritages, Tiananmen Square, the Great Wall. They also practiced doing wushu. So it was a great experience for all the kids.
So what brought you here to Washington, D.C. Chinese Film Festival?
Well, I'm an excited backer of the Asian community, and our coach, Coach Pei, suggested that I come down and see you, and I leapt at the chance to come see a great film and a great group of people.
Well, have you ever seen any Chinese movies before?
Too many.
Too many. Well, give me a few names. What are the ones that you remember the most?
My favorite, House of Flying Daggers, but I can't even remember all the films I've seen, but that's the one that I always... There's a new one out that I hope to see soon called The Assassin, but I don't know much about it yet.
Well, we know Hollywood has probably the widest impact on the movie industry worldwide, but reverse, have you seen Chinese movies' impact on the world economy, world cinema?
Well, I saw the impact while I was in China. We got a chance to travel to what we described as the Hollywood of China. In fact, my daughter participated in a small short film out there. It's a training center where they train many actors how to do martial arts scenes.
Well, are you planning to be part of the movie production in the future?
No. I'll leave that for the younger and the fitter.
Well, are you planning to see any new movies tonight at the movie festival?
I hope to stay and watch the entire film, and I'm excited to come back Sunday as well, so very excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being part of the festival.
And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. 好，我们今天的节目就到此结束了。感谢您收看今天的 American Odyssey 美国探索节目，也希望您通过今天的节目呢，能看到和了解在世界各地华人的生活。好，我们下一周同一时间、同一频道再见。